Good morning and welcome once again to Humanity Healing and their offering of Charlie Riverman here in talking through his presence of light talks. It's always a joy to be here. I'm glad I've made the time to be 10:30. For me, it's been much easier for me to write the show notes and to process what's coming through me um, in a pace that is much more pleasant. So, with that said, welcome to all of you who are here. And if you can't be here at 10:30 in the morning, it's always there on Humanity Healing. And I also posted in my blog within about a week. But I want to share with you today something that I hadn't seen for a while. It was sitting on a shelf, and it was this deck of cards here called Ask, and it is Given. And these are cards that were brought forth through the teachings of Abraham through Esther and Jerry Hicks. And as I sat there, just staring at the wall and wondering, well, what is today's topic going to be? The message came: pull that box down and pull a card. And so I did, which is usually, many times how I begin my morning. I have no idea of what I'm going to speak about, but guidance will always lead me to some format. And it's interesting. It's been a long time since I've listened to their talks, and I always enjoyed them. When I did listen to them, I knew that, like all of us, we have a connection to other sources that many people would say we're a little crazy, but we're not. We're actually tapping into universal beings and knowing that multidimensional existence happens, and it's not a fantasy, it's not an illusion. And it's been there all along. What's happened really for all of us in human physicality is that thousands of years ago, people decided not to allow people to understand that about themselves, that in order to control them, they needed to take away their freedom and then tell them that they will give them freedom. So, this is a process that's happened thousands of times over and over and over, and it's happening now. And people will take over people and then say, okay, well, now we're going to take care of you. Well, and then what happens is the caring becomes just a sort of a user program. They use people to, how do I say this, build them up and make them very wealthy and powerful and give them back little crumbs. So I say that not in an angry way. I say it because this is just what we look at history, and you can see it repeating. I mean, there's some wonderful stories in our history, but if you look at most of our history, it's been one of conquering and taking and manipulating. And good morning, Victoria. And all of these things that we have now reached a point where it's changing in another level. And while many of us who are older grew up in the 60s and were very free-minded and came into the world knowing that there was something wrong here, we didn't fit, we didn't understand what it was. And we tried our best at that time to exert our energies to shift consciousness. And we did for a while. And then what happened was everybody went chasing after business and dollars and corporations. And they said, oh, this is the new paradigm here. We need to make lots of money, and we need to, and this is fun. We can use our creative beingness to control others. And now we're in a world of control and manipulation that's out of control. And even the controllers aren't even agreeing with each other anymore. So we have this sort of self-made insanity in a nutshell. And for those of you who are experiencing this, the effect is very negative, and many people are becoming emotionally ill, physically ill, as well as just exhausted. And I'm not going to blame anything or point the finger in any one direction, excuse me, except for the leadership of everyone in our world in our own individual little colonies around the world. And this is still a form of separation rather than wholeness. And I was reminded that with the title being Reimagine Ability, is that John Lennon years ago sang, an amazing song. And it was always, one which people sort of made fun of him and, just ignored what it was. And so we can't always see the future as some of us did back then, and realize that there would be a day when we would have to look at the world from a different perspective. So I grabbed this deck and I pulled a card, this little card right here, and it says, whatever I can imagine, the universe can deliver. And that brought me to John Lennon and the song Imagine. And imagine being at peace were some of the things. Imagine being at peace without separation. This is what John Lennon sang about. What if the whole of humanity would live unattached to material possessions? Now, this was, 40 years ago, 50 years ago? I don't, it's been a long time. The reality of that song is many people were struck by it, and many people thought it was just a ridiculous, preposterous dream, and that he was just high on drugs and had lost his mind. And so those who thought that went on and built all these corporate structures and realized that that was their dream. And their dream was to be in power and in control. And they sought that. And now, as we live today, we are living in the results of that avenue that we took. And I'm not saying it's all bad. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just looking at it as it's now at a place where it's collapsing. And it's collapsing for a lot of reasons, none of which any one of us can particularly manipulate. But collectively, we can. And so the card is, whatever I can imagine, the universe can deliver. And the word for that is, if you have the ability to imagine it, or even to think about it, this universe has the ability and the resources to deliver it fully unto you. For it is like a well-stocked kitchen with every ingredient imaginable at your disposal. And I fell in love with that, really, is what I fell in love with, and realized that maybe I'm going to pull these cards more often and see what they were saying 20 years ago or whatever. How, I don't know what the year this was, but anyway, it was a while ago. I can't tell you the date. Here we are. Here we are, reimagining. Let's imagine. And that's why I broke the word up to reimagine ability. Can we imagine ourselves, us, as having the ability to change the world through our imagining? So when we look at the part of that word, it's image. What are we doing? We're seeing with our inner eye, our inner knowingness. We're visioning something in the future. And how, when we vision that something, are we visioning something that's horrible, or are we visioning something that is beneficial for everyone? And if you look at the world, that we look at the movies and we look at the TVs and all of the programming, everything they're showing us is negative. It's war, it's pain, it's suffering. I don't watch television anymore. And my beloved does, and she doesn't really pay attention to it, or so she says, but it's playing in the background, and there's always this anger, there's always this murder, there's always sexual destruction, and all of these negative things that I'm I can hear in the background. And I look at that and I just say, I'm now in a place where I'm so far away from that this does not interest me at any level whatsoever. I don't find it entertaining. I find it horrifying that we can sit and look at the suffering of other people and be amused by it. And I look at television as you should be a form of intelligence, but also a form of amusement. And it's not. It's programming us into fear. It's programming us into accepting what is negative. And it's been doing this for a long time. And it's been doing it intentionally. And it's being run by corporations who are fed by other people who want to control other people. And so all of the information that we mostly see in the public view is distorted to broadcast a specific theme or ideology, which is really not for the benefit of the whole, but it's for the few who are running the show. And this is where we're at. This is what we have to change. We have to reimagine our ability to change that. Of course, everybody's going to say, no, you can't do that. That's impossible. Well, it's not impossible. It's just is not as impossible as Esther and Jerry Hicks bringing through all of the information that they did for all those years. And it's really the nature of those cards. Ask and it is given. Who are we asking? First of all, we're asking ourselves. We can't communicate with others unless we agree within ourselves to ask someone else. So the first place we start is in our own heart and say, what does my heart desire? Not what my head has been fed to want and to need and to have. That's the outside world directing my life. What is my heart asking for? What is making me feel good when there's nobody else around? Is it watching the birds? Is it sitting by a river? Is it being in nature? Of course it is. I mean, when there's a hurricane or a ton of snow, we're not too happy. But the reality is we can look at it and say, that's the process of Mother Earth. She's not attacking us. That's just nature. I, as an individual, need to be aware that this is where I live. I don't live in this world that is separated from nature. And I have the ability, as my ancestors did thousands of years ago when they didn't have all technology, they lived in the woods with minimal amount of tools. And look what they did. And the ones we don't talk about are the ones that built great civilizations that are buried under the ground. Who are they? Are they not our ancestors as well? And they used 50-ton monumental buildings and structures around the world, not just here and there, but all over the world. We're finding those now through the technology that we have, and we're beginning to uncover them. And then when we dig them up and we look at and say, these were built how many thousand? 10,000 years ago? 5,000 years ago? Wait a minute. And now we're finding tools that bring a human physical body back 50,000 years or whatever. What happened to the history of those people? Was there a history? Was there ever a history? And when we look at that, we have to look at how many libraries and sacred gathering places of civilizations were destroyed by the invaders of another group of people because they didn't want them to have their history. They didn't want them to know their history. And they came in and they destroyed the whole principle of their history and converted them to their own. And this has been going on. And I'm not pointing the finger at any particular singularity. It's a normal practice that's been over and over and over done. And it's still happening today. And you can look what's happening in Europe and with Russia and all of these areas. These were tribal countries and they had their own sovereignty. And at one point they had somewhat of a harmony and balance with each other, and they had trade with each other and communication until they became greedy and they wanted all of it and wanted to control it. And so this is a disease. This isn't just a political theory or whatever it is. It's evil. It's living backwards. If you look at the word evil and turn it around, it says live. We have that choice. Which do we want to see? Which do we want to be? So I ask each and every one of you is to reimagine your ability. This is the message to me. Charlie, reimagine your ability to speak to the world. Reimagine your ability to talk about things that nobody wants to talk about. Reimagine what you can do to create peace in the world. And that's what I'm doing this year. This year is my learning about being peaceful within myself. The key is, how can I help anyone else if I'm the one needing more help than they do? So part of today's talk is, how can each one of you come back into yourself, reimagining who you are, what you're here to do, why you're here. All of those crazy questions that we hated, who, what, when, where, why, and how. The script But it's important that we relook at that. And then we relook at how we're feeling emotionally. As I always talk about, emotion is energy in motion. That's, when we're emotional, our energy is in motion. So the question is the motion gentle? Is the motion of our energy peaceful? Is the motion of our energy? You could add all of those pronouns to that, and and say, what am I feeling? What am I feeling in this moment? Not what am I thinking. Allow the brain to do what it's going to do, but what am I feeling when I say this? Just as now, as I talk to you, what am I feeling when I say this? Right now, I feel like I'm lecturing you. And so in that moment of awareness, I say, okay, bring it back, Charlie. Bring your energy back down. We all have that ability to get riled up when we have something we feel is important to say to somebody. But we don't have to badger each other. And I don't want to badger you. So you see, this is the simple message today. Reimagine your ability. With all of that said, I have a whole page that I'll post with this afterwards. But it's the law of attraction is really what happens. That's what Esther and Jerry spoke in their way of Abraham, bringing Abraham through. And it's a law of attraction. We attract what things to us. So when we look and we say things are going haywire, we can stop and say, am I attracting that? And if so, how am I attracting it? And then go about saying, oh, I see. I just have to change the channel a little bit. So it's like a radio, and this is what I envision. And you can turn the radio. If you don't like the music on that station, you can turn the radio. Or you can turn the radio off and not listen to that channel at all. This is what we're needing to do right now, is when we look at the world and we look at the news being presented to us, when we look at what the leadership of our countries are saying to us, it's not making sense. It just does not make sense, at least to me. And maybe I'm just the only crazy person in the world, but it's not making sense. How do you have your economy crash in your own country and give away billions of dollars to somebody else who's fighting a war? Where's the logic in that? Is there a logic in that? There's no logic in that. So there has to be a purpose for that. And the purpose for that is it's money shifting hands from behind the scenes. And we don't know the records of what happens to that. Never seem to come up, never seem to be brought before the public. That's not your information. We are your leaders. We can decide what we are doing in the best interest as we see it. And in the meantime, we have thousands of people who are hungry. We have thousands of people that are homeless. We have thousands of people who are becoming ill because of the processes that we've allowed to take place in our food system, in our water system, in our air system, in our environment. We have a methodology where we control the weather. We have ways that we can distort the energetic frequencies in areas where people live. These are all wonderful things when they're applied to benefit people. But when they're used as weapons and they're sought as weapons, there's a whole negative, dark side that, can we do anything about it? It's always going to be there. But we have to look and say, I'm not going to focus on that, because that is designed to make me feel weak and empowered, not empowered. And when you can make people feel, when you can diminish their self-worth, then you have control over them, and they look up to you, and you can manipulate them. And this, I was a street kid. I was 8 years old, 9 years old when I joined a gang. I had to join a gang. I either joined a gang or I got beat up every day. I was shot at from another gang when I was like 9 or 10 years old. I lived, it's the only world I knew. I was taken out of that world and brought to a countryside. I was like a fish out of water. Everybody knew how to play baseball. To me, a baseball bat was a weapon. I didn't play baseball. I watched baseball. If I had a baseball bat in my hand, that was because I needed protection. So you see how we are entrained as children affects our lives. And what we see right now is a world of communication through these machines, and now we have artificial intelligence that these children are listening to and going to start talking with. And they're going to start believing that this artificial intelligence is like the Wizard of Oz. And they don't have to know anymore. We all do it. I'm guilty. I look it up. I can't remember. I have a memory problem. But so in some cases, it's very positive. But if everybody starts to rely on the machine to tell us what to do and how to feel, we're not headed in a very, how do I say it, open, peaceful existence. So the time right now is to reimagine what life will be for the future of our children. And to each one of us make a stand. Doesn't have to be a big one, but begin to become aware that your voice, your ability to see something that is wrong and put your energy into correcting it or removing it is not a waste of your time or your energy. It is part of your natural process of existence. Because for thousands of years and thousands of years, we have all, as a whole, tried to make life better and easier and more beneficial for all of us. The problem is we've destroyed Mother Earth in many ways. And that can't keep going because Mother Earth will outlive all of us. Always has and always will. So I invite everybody to reimagine your ability and know that when we look at who we are and the capability we have to do something positive, do it. And learn to recognize when we're behaving in our negative or accessing and empowering the negative. Unplug. It's just plugging in and unplugging. And once you start to analyze that within yourself without driving yourself crazy, your physical body will respond. Many of us right now have diseases and things that are happening that never happened at the level they did before. And I'm not trying to explain why that's happening, but most of it is because the frequency of energy that is being spread around the world is more negative than it has been before. They've turned up the volume of that frequency, whoever they are. It doesn't matter who they are, but or why. What matters is that we recognize that and learn within ourselves how to turn that volume down or change the channel. And so with all of that said, it's our physical bodies that are responding. And as our physical bodies respond, the brain also tries to figure it out. You're confused? Why wouldn't you be confused? We're losing everything because we're listening to machinery, and we're listening to people who think nothing about anything except being in charge and control. A world of control freaks. And maybe you're one of those. And if you are, look in the mirror and ask yourself, do I want to continue this journey? Do I want to be that? Or have I just slipped into that traffic unknowingly? And I'm unhappy about it, but I don't know what to do about it. Come back into your hearts. Know that you're being called from within yourself to become aware of the sources of your distress. And as I said before, if you don't like the music, change the channel. Imagine that you no longer need to be misled by information designed to create fear rather than understanding. That's my talk for today. Hope it's opened up some thoughts in each of you and that you act on them for your own benefit. Because as you begin to take ownership of your own healing and realize that, yes, there are amazing modalities out there, people out there to help us do this. But if we're not looking in that direction, the train's going to hit us. Bless you all and thank you all. I say these talks not to discourage you. I want to embrace you with an ideology of, yes, I can. Yes, I can. And if I can do it, you can do it. If you can do it, someone else can do it. Or come back into unity, a unified field that is beneficial for everyone, the animals, the birds. We're all in this together. Bless you all and thank you all. I'll read your notes as when I close. I always appreciate your comments, and please don't hesitate to put anything there. You can, if what I say makes you angry, let it out. Put it out there, because I'm not afraid of anything that anyone has to say. I've learned that we all have something inside of us that is driving us to speak. And until we speak it and see it written, we don't get it. I love you. I thank you. I respect you. I am you. You are me. We are unity. One heart, one love, forever. And nothing less. So have a good week wherever you are. Make it the best week that you've had in a long time. Because you, each one of you, deserve it. Love you all. We'll see you next Friday. And may the blessings of peace, light, and love encourage you to shift your conscious awareness. Imagine. Bye, everybody. Love you all.